just testing. I'm just testing. In a few minutes, I'm going to meet John Murray. He's going to tell me about disruption, I think it's called. I wasn't quite sure if that was the right word for it. But suddenly in a lecture, it came up. Now I'm going to hear more about what that is. So it's just like sitting the way we want to sit. And it's a bit, like, yeah, okay. Well, this is John. And we're going to talk about disruption in a while. But John, could you please tell us first who you are?
So, my name is John Murray. I'm a program director in the computer science laboratory at SRI International, which is a large research institution in California that originated as part of Stanford University. We're now an independent institution, and we're very active right there in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Okay, so he's in the middle of Silicon Valley. Well, the reason why we are sitting here is because I was at a lecture that you did the other day, and you talked about a term which he wants to hear more about, which was called disruption. And at first I didn't know what that was about. I thought, is this disturbance or is it something else? But you called it disruption. So I want to talk to you about what that is, disruption.
Well, I think the way that I discussed the concept of disruption, it was really in the context of creativity. So we're talking about creative disruption, or disruptive creativity. The concept here is that as you're you're working with a business or seeking to find a way to change the established order, the way of doing business, that you find a way to completely change the way things are done. You're still maybe aiming at the same goal, but you're looking for ways to completely replace or revolutionize the current order, the current way that business is done. And this applies across the board. It's not just in business per se, but in social situations, social behaviors, and also in non-profits or in education system.
Okay.
The same concept applies right across the board.
Okay. You talked about at one point about big companies, if they couldn't adapt, or you even used the word morph. If they couldn't morph to something else, they wouldn't survive. Could you say a bit more about that? Because that sounds like it's a big challenge for a big company to continue.
Yes. Well, we see this in the technology industry. We see situations where there have been remarkable successes of how companies have been able to change from their established way of doing business to adopt a new business model, or to move into a new business space. This has gone on for many years. I think one of the things that we mentioned was the history of California.
Yeah.
The original Wells Fargo company had established a stagecoach system for moving people and goods, money and bullion around using a stagecoach system. Well, that whole business sort of went away when the railroads were established.
And so suddenly they were in a situation where everything changed around them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The railroad running across the country sort of basically put the stagecoaches and the Pony Express business out of business. And Wells Fargo were remarkably successful in converting from that sort of package and people moving business in converting into a financial institution. And Wells Fargo now is still exists. It's one of the largest banks in the United States.
So they turned into be a bank instead?
They turned into be a bank. The same history that happened with the American Express. American Express also started out as a company for moving people and material around. And now, of course, it also is a very large financial institution.
Okay. I remember we just talked also about, you mentioned Uber as an example of somebody taking advantage of a new possibility. Couldn't you tell me a bit more about what it is they have done that's so new, that's so different, what advantage they have?
So I think the origination of Uber stemmed from the realization that there were a lot of cars, vehicles driving around with empty passenger capacity, and a lot of people who had a need to go from A to B. So the idea of it, in some ways, it's sort of like an enhanced hitchhiking business.
Yeah.
Using the technology to match up people who have a particular need with people who have a particular resource it was sort of the foundation of Uber and the other ride-sharing businesses. Now, over time, Uber has not been around for very long, but over time, there's additional recognition that, for example, within Uber, that the company has a very large amount of information about where people need to get to and from, and their other information about their times and habits. That information just in itself is very valuable for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another part of capitalizing on the analytics from that data is very valuable from Uber's point of view.
And that's certainly possible because we have the possibility to store all these data.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So they are in a sense using a vacant space, a new space that's possible, and just moving in there. Is that the way you can understand it?
Well, yeah, I think that there's sort of two aspects to this. The established order that was already in place. It was essentially the regulated taxi system, and taxis are in most jurisdictions, the taxis are very highly regulated, and as a result, it's a costly business to get into as a taxi driver. You pay quite a lot to get your taxi license. The Uber has sort of undercut that entire business, and has made it the response time for Uber in most cases is a lot faster than the equivalent taxi. Why? Because the Uber system already knows the location of all of the vehicles that are available for providing the service.
Mm-hmm.
So the taxi arena is an area where there's the impact on their business is pretty substantial from the ride sharing companies.
Okay. So if I was a young man or woman trying to establish my own business in Greece, in Portugal, or even in Denmark, some of you that might watch this video might be that. So they should think in terms of disruption, right? They should think in terms of where there's an open space, a new possibility, where the big company isn't fast enough, but I can be fast enough.
Yes.
I can take that space.
Yes. I think that's one of the key things, that for large companies to adapt to some new piece of competition it's generally quite difficult, and this is where a small and agile business has an opportunity to rapidly have an impact on on a segment of the business.
We talked about before about the difference between. We talked about it was not necessarily a revolution where everything was thrown to the side, but disruption is a possibility to react rapidly, to take a new possibility. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I think there's one interesting way of doing it is it's a disruptive way to achieve the same end. Um, we can think of it as being sort of, well, everybody is in business to make enough money to survive, but there's a goal that people are trying to achieve. In the case of the taxis and the Uber business, the goal of the customer is to get to their destination. These are just two different ways of doing that, achieving that destination, achieving that goal. Can be done by a number of different means. So when you think of disruption, perhaps you're disrupting the traditional or existing way of achieving some goal and finding another way to achieve that goal.
And well, as we talked before, we talked about this before we started recording. So you talked about, we mentioned Blockbuster as an example of a company that didn't morph, that didn't change. Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so Blockbuster for many years was in the business of distributing films and TV series on videotape, either for rent or for purchase. And basically there was an installed base of Blockbuster clients and stores and outlets distributed in all the major markets. When basically when Netflix came along, Netflix was in a position where they were able to loan out DVDs which were mailed around at a much lower cost than Blockbuster. So the result was that it was a lot easier to simply call up order a movie on the web, and it would be delivered to your door by post within a day or two. This put the Blockbuster chain basically out of business, along with some of the others, Hollywood Video and Tower Records and some of the others, had a similar experience. They were not able to morph into this new space. Of course, Netflix itself was successful in taking a further change by going away from the physical delivery and moving into the streaming business. They were able to make that transition. Whereas Blockbuster and those companies were not able to make the transition of just delivering the goods by mail.
And they have even started a new morphing Netflix, right? They're starting to make their own TV series.
Well, that's right. So that's another you're now in a situation where you have an established customer base. You have a pretty good idea of the types of interests that they have from their from the selections of entertainment that they choose. So now you're in a situation where you can actually provide more of that, or fund more of that sort of programming to continue to engage your installed customer base.
Okay. There was one thing more we talked about on the way, about being global. I mean, one thing is being disruptive, but you also have to be disruptive in a global way, right? You have to be thinking global terms because the market is global. Am I right?
Yeah. So this is a particular challenge for businesses that are starting up in smaller countries like Denmark, Portugal, and to quite an extent places like Greece and Ireland. places where your local market is relatively limited, and if you're building a business that only serves the local market, you're almost certainly you're limiting the extent to which you can grow. I have a kind of a rule of thumb that if you've got five or more employees, if you've got five more people working in your business, then unless you're running a hairdressing salon, you are likely to need to have an international strategy, if you will,
Okay.
because you are going to be doing some business which extends beyond the border of your home country.
So when you sit there in the basement and talk about your good idea or whatever you want to do, you already from the start has to be thinking of it's the entire globe I have to deal with.
That's right. That's right. As you build a business plan, you would almost certainly need to be saying, well, how do I take what I'm doing here and expand that beyond my local community. Part of that, of course, implies straight away that you need some sort of an online network presence of some sort. But even hairdressers would need something like that to be successful.
Okay. So you got a small company that might be disruptive, more fast, more morphing, more adaptive to the situation using digital technologies. Couldn't one risk even to be a small company that you were not fast enough yourself, that you in a way, well, suddenly relies on, well, I got this idea, I sell this product, and then all of a sudden you're also out. Couldn't one risk that?
Yeah, so one of the intriguing things about setting up a small enterprise like this is what is your what is the quality that differentiates you from the rest of the space. You have a niche market, you have some special capability, special quality, some intellectual property or some trade secrets about how you do this business, and you need to be very careful about protecting that. What that means is that it makes it more difficult for somebody to sort of come in and compete directly with you, take over your market space. That will inevitably happen anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if those other people they've got some additional disruptive creativity,
yes.
Which basically steals your customer base for something that feels better. So you need to be constantly on the watch out for the possibility that will happen.
That they are also disruptive.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're not the only disruptive person in the pool here.
Okay, so you have a situation where it's not only the big company that has to survive in the sense of being able to morph. You yourself, as a small company, might come in situations where you have to morph as well.
Yeah. One of the this sort of moves into the area of potential exit strategies. That as you're small, your small company, as you grow, you have various ways to sort of turn that company into something else. If you're able to raise additional capital to explore a new market space, well, then that's wonderful. The fact that there are big companies who are having difficulty adapting into a new space may well mean that that a large company is actually interested in acquiring your business.
Mm-hmm.
This happens a lot, where in order to in order to stay on top of technology changes, sometimes it's a lot easier for a large company to acquire another a smaller company, or to merge with a smaller company, rather than try and develop the competitive technology internally. You see this especially with companies like telecommunications companies, companies like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, they are constantly acquiring smaller businesses that have a particular niche that that they can then add to their product line.
So they get ahead in competition because they don't have to develop it all.
That's
just, right. So to speak, take what's already been done by somebody else. Okay.
So lots of, for example, Microsoft, lots of Microsoft products were not developed. The original products were not developed internally at Microsoft. Some other company developed them, and it was acquired by Microsoft. A good example of that, in fact, is the case is Apple.
Yes.
Apple, at our institution at SRI International, we developed the underlying technology that went into Siri. The Siri company was established within our organization and spun out as a separate entity, and sometime later Apple came knocking on the door and acquired it. Siri was a significant, at the time, was a significant product differentiator for for the version of the Apple iPhone that was coming out at that time.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Actually, that could be it for the moment. I think I'll just shut up this, turn off the recording to see if maybe we may return.